If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and hit the subscribe button as well as the bell to be notified of future videos. Thank you.
Hello Internet, welcome back to the show. I'm glad to have Kevin Johnson here with us. The man is a bit different because he served in the South African Police Force as well as in 3-2 Battalion, which is strange. And then of course he's sort of English as well. I'm sure he can explain that to us. Kevin, you're most welcome here. Thank you for coming to us. Can you tell me, where do you come from?
Well, I was born and bred in Cape Town. So I wasn't one of those people that moved a lot, went to two schools, and my parents moved twice. So I went obviously to an English-speaking school. You know, like all South Africans in that era, you did your 12 years at school. And the memories that I have of school is that when I got to grade 7, in those days it was called Standard 5, I started to observe certain things. And the one thing I discovered when I was in grade 7 is that there used to be a knock on the door of the classroom. And then I'd be called to go down to see the principal. The first time, obviously, I was thought, oh, am I in trouble? But then I knew why I get called. So what I used to do is I used to go downstairs, and was an Afrikaans guy that was the principal, de Blanche. And he used to say to me, get money from the secretary. And then he used to give me a dress. So when I was in grade 7, I was already getting on buses to go and look for kids that weren't coming to school. So in grade 7, I was like the truant officer. And then obviously I progressed to high school, and I went to a school that was near a football stadium, because in those days there was high-level football being played in South Africa, and the well-known footballers from the UK were coming out there for like in their off season to play for about 5 or 6 weeks. And I was really into that sport. So I went to one of the top football schools in South Africa. And and I played football there. I played rugby there. I played probably about 7 sports, and I lived near the coast. So I used to paddle ski and surf. And what I discovered in my sort of school career was I excelled sport-wise always. Academically, I was always in the top 4 in the classroom to standard 8, which is grade 10. And then for some other interest, when we got to the last 2 years, I lost total interest. And I never used to stay away from school, because probably, you know, in grade 7, being the truant officer, they probably instilled in me not to stay away from school. But I definitely used to hide, you know, in the big hall, and go at the back of the hall where all the chairs were, and just park off there, not go to classrooms. So I certainly was not in the top 4 in the last 2 years. And I just think, you know, then it was seen as bad, not good, parents a bit upset. But later on in life, I just realized I was just getting bored.
Yes, the school system of those years were a bit different from today, I suppose.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you know, I used to, not serious offenses, but I used to cause some trouble in high school to just get my attitude right by being called down. And we had a Afrikaans teacher, he used to teach history, Broncos. And he was like, he epitomized the Afrikaans man, well-built, well-tanned, safari suit, but short pants with socks. And downstairs I go. And for me, it was like, he's not going to get the better of me. I need these, we used to call them cuts. You're going to get cuts. obviously on the backside. And then he used to, for the small misdemeanors, he used to get 2. I should keep I should chalk them up on my belt. And I can honestly tell you, I know these huge amount of consultancy psychologists all talk about corporal punishment or whatever it calls. I have no view on it, Koos, other than say, for me, it worked. Because when I had bad attitude, I used to go looking for those cuts.
But I suppose that even in the English schools, you had the cadet corps.
Yeah, no, we had the cadet corps. And, you know, thinking about this interview, that I noticed with some of your other interviews, how this whole English Afrikaans dynamic comes up, that I went to a high school that was in an English area and was an English school. And they say in those days, 60% of the whites were Afrikaans and 40 were English. But at our school, an English-speaking school, 70% of our teachers were Afrikaans.
Okay, and then they were actually speaking English with you.
Speak English, obviously, when you went to do Afrikaans classes. And I'll never forget, he was a real cool guy, younger than most teachers. So he was like a junior teacher, and he came from Rawsonville, and he studied at, I think, University of Stellenbosch. And in those 5 years that you were at high school, the junior teacher, like for example in Afrikaans, used to be the Standard 6s, the 7s and the 8s, that he would be the junior Afrikaans teacher. And then when you get to 9 and 10, the senior Afrikaans teacher would take over. So this one was just doing junior. He never used to rock up to school quite often. So many times we go to his classroom, there's no teacher. So we used to put the desks into a circle and we used to do bare knuckle boxing. And when he was there, he used to sit there with like an overcoat on, with like the collar up. And you look at us and say, okay, man, nou gaan ons 'n bietjie Afrikaans leer. And then he pulls the Bible out and he teaches us Afrikaans out of the Bible. There was no curriculum for that. They eventually got rid of him.
Yes, I can just imagine that this guy would not have fitted in, because they were very serious people, these teachers, especially the Afrikaner ones. Very highly respected for some reason.
But here's the interesting thing, that we as English-speaking boys, we weren't offended by that, because bearing in mind, the English-speaking kids, like if you take myself, my Sunday school that I went to at my church, in my family, that was like going to school on Sunday. The same protocols, the same discipline, you get dressed properly, you will go. There's very seldom a Sunday you don't attend, and you do that for 12 years. Simple, no questions.
Yes, it was expected, actually. I mean, the same with us was now from Afrikaans school. Sunday school was sort of part of life. After church, you had to stay behind, and then you attend there, and it's the same people who's in your class anyway. Most were of the same religion. We weren't mixed. We were very much the same type of people, I would say.
Yeah, and in junior school, because I only went to one school, the principal was Afrikaans, the vice principal was Afrikaans, he was de Blanche, vice principal was Van Helden. In actual fact, his daughter, Karen Van Helden, a doctor, she was the top South African swimmer. Then I went to the high school, and the principal there was Afrikaans man, J.P. Dumini.
Did you ever feel discriminated against in life in South Africa at all, just because you were from an English family? I know there's some people who get very angry when I ask these things, but it's people are looking at this and I want an overview of what happened in those days. So how do you feel about it?
Well, growing up in Cape Town, there were basically three areas in Cape Town. Areas that were full on like English, areas that were full on Afrikaans, and areas that were sort of more mixed. So I lived in a more mixed area, even though English was probably a bit higher percentage. So I can't say in school I never felt it. And maybe sometimes when we went and played rugby against the Afrikaans schools, but no, I could never say that I ever felt it in school. Where you started to feel it was when you get into uniform. So, at the police, in the army, but my personality was quite strong. So I don't know how to put this to you, but it never affected my career. It never jeopardized my life. So therefore, whatever came out of their mouths, you could have two approaches. One, you're going to bliksem them. So that normally sorts out a lot of them. And the other one is that it's your decision to see that as being something that's offensive. It's your mind that makes up that decision rather than what comes out of their mouth.
Yeah, that's quite true. And besides, you're quite a big man yourself. You're not a small guy.
Yeah. So no, it was all bollocks. I think when you got to the higher ranks, which I wasn't going to make a career, we got to the higher ranks, I would imagine there start to be fewer and fewer English people. But I'll tell you something now, that a lot of the senior people that I was able to meet in the military, not because I was senior, but because I was at Buffalo and they used to come there, is that some you could see they were, for want of a better word, arse-creeping the ideology of the Broederbond, etc., etc. And they were who they were. But there were other senior ones that used to go out of their way to speak English to you. So you could almost say that in that echelon, there were two groups of people. Now, I tell you something now, no matter who he perhaps belonged to, take Jannie Geldenhuys. What a man. An international man, first and foremost. How can you ever feel that, he could be discriminating against you as an Englishman when he stands there? Everything about him personifies internationalism.
Yes, and he was a damn good general.
Yes,
he was
yes.
acting chief of staff.
Yes, yes. Now, Magnus Malan, because the Security Council used to come to Buffalo to have their meetings. So the Security Council, I'm not sure whether you're aware of it, would be, as I understand it, the top generals, including the police, maybe half a dozen of them, the senior cabinet, certain cabinet ministers who have certain portfolios, obviously the prime minister or president, and then if you were the most senior serving cabinet minister, even if you had a portfolio that wasn't relevant, you'd still be invited. It was almost like etiquette. And they used to come up there. And let me tell you, that opened up the world to me.
I have to wonder how they behaved, because we've heard a few funny incidents at Fort Toppies by the Special Forces members who were telling of him about their behavior, which wasn't really quite a bit of drunkenness.
Well, put it this way. There were in three categories. The first category was the man, Pierre Botha, total different animal. Early to bed, everything. Then was the rest. And then there was a third group. And there was one in the third group, Botha.
Yes, but Botha's behavior is very well known.
Yes.
And I would love to have one of his police bodyguards here on this show to tell us how drunk he really was or not. That we can, figure it out.
the cut below his eye, I rest my case.
Yeah, something must have happened. No, we've heard the stories about him. They were really not. But anyway, so
Pierre Botha is now going to move off to his rondavel there at Buffalo. So he's got policemen that look after him, but to give the policemen cover, not that it was a dangerous area where we were, otherwise they wouldn't have come there. Our guys would give them protection. So they all were walking down to the rondavel. Beautiful, overlooking the river. Truly, it was a game farm rather than a military base. So my mate, I won't mention his name, but he's in Namibia today. So he's walking with Pierre Botha. And he was then a corporal just about to become a sergeant. So Pierre Botha says to him, come, stop saam met my. So they walk in there and he says to my mate, how do you feel about everything? Because the war was starting to now, heat up there. He goes, no, Prime Minister or President, whatever he was at that stage. Did he become a president eventually?
Yes, he did. I think he did.
I think maybe he was then already, maybe president. Anyhow, so he says to him, meneer, alles gaan goed, etc., etc. He says, but I just worry about one thing. So Pierre Botha says to him, what is that? He said, I check you guys out here. I hope you guys are on top of things.
Oh.
And Pierre Botha told either Magnus or Constant Viljoen, because then Constant was there and he was the chief of the Defence Force. Magnus was Minister of Defence. And Jannie Geldenhuys was chief of the army. Yeah, that's right. So he told either Constant Viljoen or Magnus Malan the next day. And then the message got down to our OC. And Pierre Botha's message was, ek het lekker geslaap. That a young man says to me, we're on top of what we have to do. Just make sure that you guys are doing what you have to do.
Yeah, that's an amazing story.
Yeah.
And that's the type of thing
lekker geslaap.
Yeah, it means he slept well. He had no problems. He just felt good about what he was told.
Mm.
That's very good. This school of yours, was it mixed in the sense of boys and girls, or just boys alone?
In the junior school, there was a big wall that separated us. And then at the high school, there was a girls' school, but it was like 5 miles away. So no, it was always boys.
And of course, you have a natural instinct to date a girl, I suppose. And were you ever interested in the girls' school on the other side, or as we came along?
To be honest with you, on reflection, I would say I was a pretty late starter. I was absorbed in my, if I had to think about it, in school, with my sports, yeah. And then also I could see my entrepreneurial flair coming through, because I had a friend in junior school who was from Namibia. So his father used to get these precious stones. So we used to go like knocking on doors and selling precious stones, very good money. I used to sell, my mother used to make, what is it, little squares, fudge, and just for like the school, etc. But I used to take a percentage of it because my teacher said to me, wow, you give out a lot of money, your parents, from the selling of the fudge. So I just thought to myself, well, they're getting a lot of money, so why must they know that I keep 10%? Because I'm the one that's selling. And then my uncle ran a very, very big paint shop. And in those days, you painted your house or you put wallpaper up. He had a big shop in the heart of Cape Town. And from the age of 14, I'd be working in his shop selling. So between that and my sports, which included paddle skiing and surfing, and then probably a little bit late in life when I got to standard 7, standard 8, my mate and myself used to, on a late Saturday afternoon after all sport, we used to get on a train and go to Simonstown. And then we used to sleep over on the beach there. And then the next day we used to do scuba diving, not with tanks, just wetsuits and spear gun. So, you know, in a big way, there wasn't really no time for like girlfriends.
Yeah, that sounds to me quite idyllic in a certain sense, but that is Cape Town. Cape Town is laid back. What you're describing here is still happening to this very day, I would say.
I'll never forget when we used to do the scuba diving. Two things about the scuba diving is when we used to sleep over, it was in the era where Pierre Fourie was boxing. So we used to get to like put our radio on and listen to Pierre Fourie, light heavyweight.
Yeah, he was a policeman, wasn't he?
No. The other one was, there were two others that did well. There was Gerrie Coetzee and another Coetzee. That other Coetzee did it.
I can't remember now myself. I know one was in the dark unit.
Yeah, and then obviously die Beck van Boomstraat.
Yes, that's the one.
Yep, Kali
Knutser.
And then you had a brother, Benny.
Yeah, I must tell you a story about Kali. I don't know if it's true. But he apparently holds a record for running the quickest with his dog up to the reservoir. Now, at the dog school in Pretoria in the old days, you know, there's no such thing as a training establishment without a hill or a copy or something next to it, because where else must you run to? And so you run up and down that reservoir. There's a reservoir right on top of it. It's quite steep. I mean, it's a distance to get to it, and then you go up. And I ran it a few times myself. So he apparently ran that thing in a record which nobody could break.
Pierre Coetzee was the policeman.
Yes, he was actually a PTI when I was in the college.
Yeah.
His tools were also standing there right next to the rest of the people's Corollas. Very nice man. Very, very nice man.
And then when I was in the police in Cape Town, he was at Wynberg Police Station. He was a professional, well, you call them semi-professional because he had a job as well. But I'll never forget, it was Jan Wilkins.
Oh, yeah.
Percy Hall, and the policeman, Tarzan Jacobs from Cape Town.
Yeah,
so I got into that because of Tarzan Jacobs too. So I used to go to the big town hall in Cape Town and watch them fight.
Yeah, that was wrestling. Jan Wilkins and wrestling.
Yeah.
Now, these were men of men. In case you people listening here don't know about it, research it a bit. One had like a false kick, if I remember, ostrich kick, which was fairly unique. I've never seen it before. But Jan Wilkins never lost, as far as I remember. He was just unbeatable.
He was a Miliboer. And let me tell you, he never had much hair, but he used to go like this. Then you knew.
So do you think it was true that they were really fighting, or were they putting it on, or perhaps a bit of both?
I got to say to you that their physique attributes was more important to me. So I can't say in my head that, there was a constant sort of, this is all like a joke. No, I just think it's full on. I somehow in the back of my mind knew there were some tricks being played here, but that was actually irrelevant because you used to see some blood. And the showmanship wasn't as great as it is today. Today, it's like really full-on showmanship.
And I suppose it was quite popular. There were lots of people there.
Yep.
And then, okay. So how did you end up in the police, Kevin? What happened?
Right. So what happened is I think it when you were in matric, your last year, maybe 9, but I think matric, you get your call-up papers.
Yeah, you registered at 8 when you turn 16.
Yeah. So mine is, you're going to the army, you're going to Heidelberg. But Heidelberg, not in the Cape, in the old Transvaal. Very quickly after that, I get a letter from the police. And they talk there about things. So you've got to go to the big building where the Afdeling Commissaris and everyone sits there in the Western Cape. And there's a major boa that I've got to go and see there. And I sit down and I get tea and a bit of biscuits and all that, very nice. And that's speaking English to me, even though he's a full-on Afrikaans guy, you can hear it in the accent and everything. And he's now talking to me about, I don't know what the word is, but in Afrikaans it's loteling.
Recruit.
Okay, lotelinge. Yeah, because when we got to the college, he's klomp lotelinge. And that's the word you remember. And so he goes on to explain things that, do you know what you get in the army when you go and do your army training? I go, yeah, I've got a friend there. You get 26 rand a month. I go, oh, that's interesting. He says, you're going to get your matric? Because the exams still have to be written. I go, yeah. He says, well, if you come to the police for a year, instead of a year in the army, we pay you 206 rand a month. 26 rand, 206. For a man that works in a paint shop, for a man that sells precious stones, for a man that sells fudge, it's a no-brainer. An absolute no-brainer. What papers do I sign, sir? I don't know what the rank is. I say to him, what papers must I sign, sir? He said, no, you can think about it, speak to your parents. I said, no. When it comes to this stuff, I make my decisions. What papers do I sign? Done and dusted. I was on top of the world, 204 quid. I didn't even look into what it entails. I knew I'm going to Pretoria. And what I did is I didn't speak to many people other than my parents. So I didn't expose myself to maybe my friends who were English parents saying, you don't go there, it's an Afrikaans place. None of that actually happened because besides my parents, I told no one. I was just going to do national service. So he did say something to me that you have to start like a week earlier than when the army guys go. For 200 and odd quid a month course, who's worried? I'll start 2 months earlier. So there were 5 of us, I'll never forget it, 5 of us at the station, the big Cape Town station, platform. It was the last platform. That was the Transkaroo. So there's the 5 of us. And now we're on our way to Pretoria. So when we got to the college was empty because the bulk of the people are permanent. They haven't arrived yet. So they're at the police college up against the one fence. And I think it was like the horse stables that were down in the corner. Just above that were our bungalows. And there were 4 platoons that were Leutelinge. And what I found interesting there is that there was almost an equal amount of English and Afrikaans. So in their recruiting, they must have worked that out. There must have been thought given to that. So that indicated to me that they were looking to recruit English people to become permanent policemen. Otherwise, they would have just stuck to what they normally do, which is the bulk of the people that voluntarily go there are Afrikaans. Because it's not like the army, the police is proper Afrikaans.
Yes, I understand now. So this was like a national serviceman, but instead of going to the army, you're going to the police.
Yeah,
yes,
we were the first intake.
Did that too. He went, served his 2 years in the police.
I'm led to believe we were the first intake.
Yeah. So you people could volunteer and then you were put in your own separate platoons. You were not with a regular, permanent. So you were down there where the Rede is.
That's it.
The cavalry would be right across you.
That's
Later years, we had the helicopter pad down as well as TIN. The counterinsurgency vehicles were parked around there. I think that quite a few of them were standing guard around guard duties.
Yeah. So our bungalows were on the ground. There weren't buildings.
Yeah, that was further up. By the main parade road.
And there were 2 English platoons, 2 Afrikaans platoons. And the people that looked after us, the day-to-day discipline, all the activity going on in the bungalow, the inspections, the running around, getting us from point A to point B, etc., were all sergeants.
Not long sergeants.
They also, for those army listeners, it would be 3 stripes and the castle.
Yeah, staff sergeant.
Okay. But there was one guy there, Landman. He was an honor sergeant. So he never had the castle, so he hadn't written the exams yet.
Yeah, you know how I explained that, the 3 stripes and the castle.
Yes.
It's about being married or not.
Yes. And we had a guy, Nell.
Oh, Patrollie Nell.
Patrollie Nell.
Where I have to interrupt you. Sorry, but
arms.
that guy was like the RSM of a college.
Yep.
People still speak to him to this day, including myself. The man was a damn legend.
Yep.
You could hear him 6 miles away and then he was whispering.
And his voice used to screech.
Yeah. So tell us about that. I really am interested.
Right. So the photo I sent you.
We'll put it on here.
When we're told now we're becoming policemen, and we were now in uniform on that day when we actually put that step out uniform on. Him, Patrollie Nell, he's the dude standing in front. He's obviously hasn't got the long tunic on. He likes his short pants and short top. So where do I start? In the police, the bungalows are very long. So there's a big middle path that needs to be polished. And to the left and the right are the beds in rows. Whereas at the infantry school, it's the same bungalow, except to the left and right, there's doors. And then you sleep 4 or 5 in a room. In the police, it's 100% open plan. And what can I say about the bungalow? The bungalow is all around the making up of the bed. The bed was the center of everything. And so those who are army listeners, I would say the bed is exactly like the army bed. You get it in a row, those 2 stripes on the blanket, you get that sheet done properly, you get your, in our case, your R1 rifle opened up, parts taken out, all there, your Dixie, your eating utensils, it's the normal stuff. And then you got your trommel either to the side or in front of the bed. And that's where you start to realize that you have to conform and you can't make up your mind how it must look. It must look a certain way. And if it's not a certain way, okay, you are not just going to get bliksemed, but the whole bungalow will get bliksemed. So I suppose that's the start of the buddy-buddy system of working together as a cohesive sort of unit. It happens there in that bungalow. And naturally, the extension is when you go to the parade ground. That's where you learn to draw.
Yes, it's a military type environment. It's really not the civilian police at all. People misunderstand the South African police force. It's not the normal, it's not the Bobby on the beat. It's got nothing in common with each other.
We did our basics there at the police college in brown overalls. I know the permanent police used to dress differently, but us, the Lotelinge, the 4 platoons, we were in overalls for our whole stay at the police college, except for the very last day. What was also different there is that there were no lieutenants around us. There were obviously lieutenants and majors and that in the police college, but around us were all staff sergeants. And then what was different to the army is that the staff sergeants that looked after you, like Patrollinel, etc., he was my platoon sergeant. At that stage, he wasn't in charge of a company. There was a potgieter that was in charge of the Patrollinel and them. And what was different to the infantry school, although there were big similarities, what was different is that in the police, the sergeants were older because you come through the ranks and you go write exams to obviously get there. And then also during the day, they would be responsible for parade ground work where you drill. I'll tell you later on why I didn't like it. And then they would do it. But when you go and do like proper PTI, you go to PTI instructors. Obviously, the mucking you around and the running and the press-ups and that in the bungalow outside, they would do it. Wake you up in the night, they would do it. But you used to go to do proper training, physical training, boxing, wrestling, bit of judo, and the various other exercises. They had proper trained people. And if I remember, they used to have like long pants, but like a white vest with a blue. And die manne was gebou.
Yes, they were fit looking, man. There's no doubt. And did you people also climb those ropes?
Oh, yes. Ropes? Thanks for reminding me.
Because that was a damn nightmare. I mean, boxing is still fun. You can eat somebody, you feel good about it.
Yeah.
Or perhaps not, but but the ropes.
That rope was a psychological thing.
Yes.
It was the one thing that people didn't like to do because it was you and the rope. And then there was also a beautiful woman that was there in that division. So that was that. So say again.
Wasn't it Charmaine Gale? I'm trying to think now who was
No, I think she was
after your time.
She was after me. She was the high jumper.
Because you're talking about in the 70s now. I'm talking
76, blonde hair. You know,
but I have to say, those ropes were not nice because you would climb up and you would hang there. And it's about 3 stories, I would say. It's quite high. And then you're hanging there. And you stay hanging there until they blow a whistle or you fall off.
Yes.
You better fall the instructor miss you. I mean, you can try and fall on him, but he jumps aside.
Yeah. I was lucky in the sense that at school, I had an Afrikaans teacher that used to coach us rugby. So he was a real forward-thinking guy. And he, in those days, said it's important to also get into the gym. So we used to get on a bus and we used to go twice a week to a gym. We used to use weights, and then also by pedal skiing. You know, the arms could do the trick for me. But, you know, it wasn't just about using your arms. You had to use your feet correctly.
Yes, and stomach muscles. Once you get the technique, it's actually not hard.
Yes,
But
yes.
But you have to click it yourself, and hanging there, of course, you just hang.
Yeah. So it was PTI training, drill on the parade ground. That was heavy. I'll tell you why. And then third, musketry, which was around for us in our year, the little Haim car, I think it was 9mm, shotgun, can't remember the make, and 9mm parabellum. So that was, and then I think we did also first aid. Was a tall sergeant, good-looking guy, dark complexion, Swanepoel. And then there was a short little guy, the complete opposite to him, thin, short, Stadler. And his father eventually became the second in command of Veiligheid, a general. And I think he served under that well-known journalist, Citizen Force guy. I think you interviewed him, Steenkamp. I think Stadler,
Yes,
Stadler worked under...
Stadler was his second in command.
Yeah.
I believe they were the only two security branch officers who were not mentioned at the TRC for any human rights violations.
Yes. Yep. I think the gun-ho type of people up there in those senior ranks didn't like the reality that these guys were sharing with them. Not the truth, the reality. Boys, this thing that's coming our way requires a political solution. You can stand on your head, you can have the best armed forces, the best police, political solution. The longer we wait, the more it's going to bite us in the bum. I think they were that type of men. Foresight.
Yeah, they were thinking. They were, you know, capable of thinking ahead. Many of us were not, sadly so. And I don't insult anybody. They're just different people, you know, different ways.
So anyhow, so we get back now to the parade ground. We must be a couple of weeks in. So by then, you got to have a certain type of houding, and you know, you're going to be grasping this whole thing of the parade ground. And bearing in mind, you just don't do it on the parade ground. You know, you run from point A to B in a squad, and then, you know, there by your bungalow, you're train on, and it's, you know, you're getting used to the various drills that you got to do. Now, we have to line up tallest to shortest. So I'm the third tallest guy in my platoon. So we obviously, you know, when we march, the three of us are in front. Koos, so far, so good. But what? Patrolling now, I mean, he, as you rightfully said, he was like, went on to be like the RSM. So he wasn't just any sergeant. And drilling obviously played a big role in his life. He starts going for me. And what we establish, and I say we, him and me, I don't know how to halt properly. I don't know in a squad how to come to attention. And after a couple of weeks, he took his hat off one day. and he threw it on the ground in the dust. And he looked at me and he said, "Fuck off." And I had to go stand on the side. I could see in his eyes that he was frustrated, that he couldn't teach me to come to attention and come to a halt. And that's where the hat had to go onto the ground on the parade ground.
But what happened further? I mean, they're not going to leave you alone.
No. So obviously get back into the swing of things and all of that. And I realized, when you're there, I said to myself, because you used to in school, because I remember in junior school, you used to sit in rows in the classroom, two to a desk, and then the guy that's the brightest sits at the first desk, left-hand side, second there, third, fourth. I was always third in junior school, got to the front desk once as number 2, never number 1. So I always had this attitude of, you don't have to be the best, just be in the top 15%. So in the musketry, in the PT, and then the one other thing that we used to go to as well, there was a building there where we had 3 sergeants, and that's where you go learn the police law, the police admin, I think Roman Dutch law, whatever it is. And so there, obviously, I'm in the top 15%. So I just said to myself, well, for just the halt and the attention, I'm not in the top 20%. I've just got to fuss bait with this thing. This is not going to make or break me as a policeman. Because unlike the army, once you leave the police college, most of the people are not really on parade grounds and that in the police. So you learn to love that. But right at the end, he did come up to me. Because when that was finished, I don't think they had it planned for us, but things were starting to get bad. So what they did is they got 4 platoons to move to Malieskop. So we stayed up there for 5 or 6 weeks, and that was more like counterinsurgents, out in the bush, learning how to do patrols, lay ambushes, bit of tracking, basic tracking, etc. Obviously, the PT continued, but more sort of obstacle courses and long hikes with heavy packs and all of that. And so I'm almost 100% sure that when we finished there, I'm almost convinced that they were going to ask for volunteers for Rhodesia. Not tell you got to go, volunteers. That I'm almost 100% sure. And I mean, I was getting really, really excited. So that didn't materialize because they had other priorities. And the other priorities actually did come true, which was the 6th of June.
Yes, the Soweto riots.
Yeah,
16th of June.
So I'm almost 100% sure that when we, at the police college, they found out I played rugby. Now, if you want to make a proper, if you're really, really determined to get into a fighting unit, you've got to keep quiet about your sport capability because they hold you back. And then this guy at Groblersdal, he found out, the major, and he said, no, you stay here at Groblersdal. Oh, fuck, I want none of this. So I just didn't really get into any of the sports. I just I'm going to be a policeman and do what's needed to be a policeman. So I'm almost 100% sure that we went back to the police college for maybe 2 or 3 days. Yeah, I think we went back, and there we were given a uniform, a step-out uniform, your day-to-day work uniform. At that stage, even though we were up at Malierskop, we had never ever put on camos. We were just did up there also with a brown overall. So we go back to the police college in Pretoria from Groblersdal, Malierskop. And then I think there we went to the quartermaster and we got our uniform. And that's the photo I sent you. And Patrollinel standing in front. So I think it might have been on that day when the photo was taken that we were leaving the college after lunch. We were going to have lunch. And I think there was a chappie there, Lesh.
Yes, Lesh.
I think he was quite senior.
He's very famous in the police circles. Yeah, everybody knows about him.
Yeah, he was going to come and see me. Then it was probably in June, I would imagine, or July. And then they asked me about the rugby. And no, because police had a good team in Pretoria. I think the Northern Transvaal coach was heavily involved with police too, Brigadier Bert van Drach.
Who, of course, became very famous as General van Drach.
Yeah.
Head of counterinsurgency.
So no, I'm like the rest of the people. So obviously the police are playing a very good PR here. So they're sending you to your hometown. And a Patrollinel comes up to me. Now, of course, obviously now he's a different type of person. It's an hour or two to go. And I must say, when we got back from Malierskop, he was a different guy towards us. Then what I discovered, he had never been to Malierskop. Because
there were a lot of these instructors who actually never saw a shot fired in their lives.
Yeah.
And I remember going there once as a flying squad sergeant, and we were standing in the shade close to the hospital. I mean, you didn't mention the hospital built, but I'm sure you would have. And one started shouting, come here. And so, who's this guy? Because we actually outrank him. And why you can't see on our mustaches that we cannot be student constables, God knows. But we don't want to humiliate him in front of his platoon, so we came closer and he was like, oh, don't I know you from somewhere, he was really backing down because, anyway.
So anyhow, so on the last day, he comes up to me and he says something along the lines of, jy gaan 'n goeie policeman word. Because he had the reports from Malierskop. So basically saying to me, you're going to be a good policeman. He says, bly weg van die paradegrond. I said to him, Sergeant, it's been my intention from day one. Obviously, don't antagonize him because he loved the parade ground. So that's that.
Kevin, thank you for telling us about your life, your childhood, time in the police college, Malierskop. We are grateful for you. It's always interesting for us who look back, and there's a lot of similarities, and there's also a lot that we can learn. So thank you for your time. In the next episode, we're going to look at your further career in the South African Police Force. And in the episode after that, we will turn to your Army career. That will not be on the SAP list. It will be on the SADF list. So just search for his name. I'm sure you will find Kevin Johnson. Kev, thank you very much once again to all of you listening here. And I always say to you, you have a story. Come and tell us. Let it not die with you. Come and tell us about it. We are really interested in hearing you. There is no such thing as a man who is unimportant. That nonsense is over now. We will put our stories out there and we can be judged accordingly. Thank you to all of you. God bless until we meet again.